I'm very glad to be here today, and I'm very glad to have been here at Maxwell School since 2 months among a community of people who want to make the city better. The Athenian oath is about making the city better than it is. And corporate social responsibility is about making the city better. So this is our streamline today. I will go through it a bit rapidly, so whenever you feel I'm jumping, ask any question you would like. Let me situate, first of all, corporate social responsibility in the sustainable development sphere. When we speak about improving the city, we're talking about development, what has become the sustainable development. This is the sustainable development pentagon and the 3 pillars of sustainable development. Government, that was the key to development until the World War, then entered civil society after the World War, and then businesses were introduced to the sustainable development, to the development concept, and then the sustainable development starting the 60s. When we talk about sustainable development, these are our goals. And a few days ago, we celebrated the first anniversary of the sustainable development. What do they have to do with businesses? If we read through the Sustainable Development Goals, there are many of them that are directly related to businesses, industry, innovation, and infrastructure, decent work and economic growth. Sustainable cities and communities is about businesses too. Responsible production is businesses. But if we look at it generally, businesses intervene in all the sustainable development goals. So when we are talking about that 3rd pillar, businesses in sustainable development, they are key to all the sustainable development goals. Now, businesses, are they responsible or not? This is a social perception. This is a social construct. So a company could be ranked as socially irresponsible or socially responsible or very responsible socially, but it does evolve with the social perceptions. So what was responsible 20 years ago might not be responsible right now. As all the social norms evolve, a simple example of that, smoking, it touches our lives, our daily lives. 20 years ago, it was very common to offer cigarettes to whomever visits you. Right now, offering cigarettes is not socially acceptable anymore. So, if you want to rank companies, if they are responsible or not, this is the palette of ranking. It could be socially irresponsible. A company could be compliant with rules and regulations. A company could conform to social norms. These might differ, and it could be proactive in advocating social norms. Now, the origins of corporate social responsibility are in the environmental concerns of the 18th century with the extractive industries and the social changes at the time. It was first coined by General Electric, a company, at the eve of World War II, and then it became mainstream in the multinationals since the 1960s, and now it's spreading all over. What is corporate social responsibility? Corporate social responsibility addresses the responsibility of businesses towards society. Now, if I was addressing a community of businessmen, I would have said it's corporate sustainability. If I'm addressing philanthropist, I would say it's strategic philanthropy. In fact, all these names, they might mean the same thing, or they might differ a bit one from the other, but essentially it's the responsibility towards society. Corporate social responsibility addresses 3 factors, so 3 elements. It's the economic growth, the environmental sustainability, or social equity, or we might say the triple Ps. Triple Ps like people, profit, and the planet, okay? an essential attribute of corporate social responsibility. It should not be a window dressing. It should not be a greenwashing issue. So you probably know what greenwashing is. But does anybody know what pinkwashing is? No. Pinkwashing.
Can you explain greenwashing?
Greenwashing, pretending to be socially responsible while you're not socially responsible. Pinkwashing, pretending to be socially responsible towards women rights while you are not. So, what are the main responsibilities of a business? What is the basic responsibility of any business? Can anybody pitch in? The main responsibility of any business is to preserve itself, is to make profits. It's raison d'être. Any company, the reason for it being there is to make profits, to bring growth and jobs. So this is the main responsibility of any business. A business that is doing good while it's not making any money is not a socially responsible business. The second level of responsibility is addressing the concerns of the employees, your internal community, your external community, where you are extracting your resources, and the environment that is gaining in importance day after day. And the third level of social responsibility is when you address societal change. But this, you cannot ask any company to do that. A small company or a medium-sized company might not have the ability to address changing society. A company that has a certain size will be responsible again, towards changing the grand society that we live in. Now, debates. When we talk about corporate social responsibility, it's becoming mainstream, but there still is a vivid debate. There are two debates, in fact, in the theory. A theoretical debate and an empirical debate. The theoretical debate opposes the shareholder theory to the stakeholder theory. The shareholder theory, well, championed by Mr. Friedman and still cited until now, is that businesses have only responsibility towards their shareholders, to make money for their shareholders. It's not their responsibility to address stakeholders or societal responsibilities. While the stakeholder theory says that businesses have the responsibility to address societal issues because this is where they have their resources in order to produce that wealth for shareholder. But even if we reread Friedman, he said, make shareholder richer within what is socially commendable. So in the 1970s, businesses were not asked to be socially responsible, while right now, society requires companies to be socially responsible. So these two views, in fact, are converging together. Now, who are the stakeholders? That's easy. Everybody that affects or is affected by the company endeavor. How can we partition them? What is the division of the stakeholders? There are many divisions, but I find this one very plausible. So you have government, you have the public as your clients, and the publics as purveyors of your workforce. The financial community and the media. The media have few resources for you as a company, but it has a big leverage. Now, that was the theoretical debate. The empirical debate opposes the utilitarian theory, the economic theory, to the sociopolitical theory. The utilitarian theory that assigns a price tag for everything. So if a man dies in a car that was burned, Ford decides to defend itself in court by assigning a price tag to the number of guys that were burned in the Ford Pinto. And to their sense, it cost less than redesigning the Ford Pinto. The Ford Pinto is a classical case when we are explaining the utilitarian theory. The second theory is the economic theory, based on the agency theory. So the manager is mandated to produce profits on behalf of the shareholder. And as long as he has a positive accounting, that is the positive accounting theory, and he is within his legal rights, he does not have the obligation of addressing the societal needs. This theory defers all wisdom to allegedly free markets. Is anyone in the room that believes that markets are efficient? I thought so. Sociopolitical theory. So the sociopolitical theory is anchored in the Kantian ethics. It addresses the duty of loyalty to shareholders, but the duty of care to the stakeholders. And it's imperative on treating human beings as ends, not as means. Now, what is the economic justification of the sociopolitical theory? When you're addressing the societal needs, it means you are legitimizing your use of the resources supplied to you by society. Factors of CSR. Many classifications, I chose this one. These are the factors that any CSR conscious company has to address. It's employee relations, it's responsible products, is compensating for our environmental impact, the diversity of thought, community, your immediate community, human rights, of course, and corporate governance. Now, there is a controversy here. Many theoreticians, academicians, place corporate governance above corporate social responsibility, while in this classification, and to my sense, it's below corporate social responsibility, because the way you govern your institution is commanded by how you address your corporate social responsibility. How do you perceive your responsibility? But anyway, this is debatable. Major CSR reporting initiatives. Reporting is an integral part of corporate social responsibility. So the most onerous one is certainly the ISO 26000. Then you have the GRI, that is less onerous, and the United Nations Global Compact. That is not a mandatory, but it belongs to the office of the United Nations Secretary General. It's a voluntary reporting initiative, and it's gaining ground, and the other ones too. But the main three are the first, the ISO 26000, the GRI, and the United Nations Global Compact. Now, who makes decisions in a company? The manager. The manager has the duty to look at profits and defends himself against any obligation by saying, it does not make me any profits. Corporate social responsibility, as I perceive it, is an opportunity for businesses, and here are some proof. So this is a graph that illustrates that brand strength, 28% of the brand strength is corporate social responsibility. So if people perceive that a company is socially responsible, this alone makes 28% of brand strength. These are some meta-analytical studies that prove that corporate social responsibility is beneficial for business, makes money for businesses. Even the staunchest free market theorist will appreciate that having 12% more clients will reflect on the price of your shares in the market. So sustainability or corporate social responsibility narrows organizational slack, allows price premiums. So all these are research, meta-analytical research, that proves that, in fact, corporate social responsibility is a money-making component for corporations. You have to address it right. Decision-making model. Now we will be talking about a corporate social responsibility decision-making model. The 7-nodal CSR decision-making model. In fact, this is a theory, the theory of motivations, multiple level motivations driving for corporate social responsibility. And here, the authors, Aguilera et al., they analyze the motivations, the instrumental motivation, the social motivation, the moral motivation at each level of the organization. So we have the individual level, the micro, the meso, the macro, and the supra, or the individual, the organizational, the national, and the transnational level. So all these are components that add pressures on the organizations to be socially responsible. So why might an individual require his company to be more socially responsible? Or why a shareholder or a stakeholder might require a certain company to be socially responsible? So all these are pressures that add on a company to be socially responsible. Now, when the pressure adds to a certain level, crosses a certain threshold, it reflects on the manager that has to take a decision. Before a certain level of pressure, managers are more likely to go about doing business as they used to. But when pressure to be socially responsible builds to a certain level, so the pressure diverts to the manager in order to take a decision. Now, this is a second theory. The theory that says, that analyzes how does a manager, in fact, process information in order to take a certain decision. And again, in these values of rational egoism, you have the instrumental motivations, you have the social motivations, and you have the ethical motivations. In that theory, there is a certain analysis of what might be the universal values of ethical business. Are there any universal values? This theory says, yes, there is. So, pressure builds on a company, then the pressure arrives to the manager processes information in order to take his socially responsible decision or not. Now, this comes to the realm of psychology, the theory of planned behavior. Even when you have a manager that develops a decision to go socially responsible, this is developing an intent. The intent to be transformed into a behavior, there are actual behavioral controls. So, the interplay between these two theories is whether the actual behavioral controls might prevent the intention of the manager to take socially responsible behavior, to drive his company to act responsibly, socially responsible. Now, supposing that we have crossed all these thresholds, and now the company is adopting a socially responsible behavior. This is the fourth theory, the implicit and explicit attitude theory, that says if the values are internalized, this is the implicit attitude, as opposed to the explicit attitude. It means that the values are not internalized. We're taking an attitude, but we do not believe in the values. Now, when we reach that point, if the values are internalized, in fact, they build more pressure on the company to be even more socially responsible. But if the values are not yet internalized, it's an explicit attitude, we will spin out some pressure outside in order to reduce the pressure on the company. So this is a bit complicated, but simply put, it's like that. It's pressure building on a company, then the manager has to take a decision. To take a socially responsible behavior, that is the interplay between the intent and the behavior with the actual behavioral control. Now, the decision is taken, the company acts socially responsible. If the values are implicit, we build more pressure on the company, and we're in this virtuous cycle where we build more pressure on the company, and the company goes more socially responsible. While if the position is explicit, the values are not internalized, we spin out the pressure outside of the company, So this is, where are we?
I think it just got minimized to the right. Yeah, down here, I think. Is it? See, okay. So now you can get it back up. Is that the one you had?
Okay.
Oh, that's the wrong one. Or is that?
And this is it. This is the presentation. I went through it a little bit fast, but I hope that the message got through. Any questions? Yes.
Pierre, thanks for this presentation. My name is Ruslan. I'm a PhD student here at Maxwell. My question is, let's say I'm a social campaigner.
Yes.
And in order to address the issue that I'm trying to solve, I want to put pressure on businesses
Okay.
to be socially more responsible.
Okay.
What would be 2 or 3 recommendations, concrete tools that I could use in order to put pressure on businesses?
Very interesting questions. Now, here are the elements that any public policy maker can address in order to add pressure on a company. Now, definitely it's contextual. Now, is there enough pressure on the company? We have to address the manager. There is not enough pressure on the company. These are the buttons that we could push. Here, on the transnational level, it's about international laws and organizations. On the national level, it's about the national context, rules, regulations. On the societal context, and on the individual context. So you do not have a one-size-fits-all. It depends on the context. Now, another button to push. Maybe a manager wants to drive his company socially responsible, but he cannot because of his actual behavioral controls. Supposing he wants to give out money for something, but he will not be tax exempt. So this is an actual behavioral control. Another actual behavioral control could be brought from his peers. So if a company wants to address the environmental issue, but his peers will be at odds with him because he will expose them, this is also an actual behavioral control. So this is it. We are displaying here what are the buttons, where are the nodes that any public policy maker can address. But he has to assess the situation before to know which button to push. Where is the vulnerability? Did I answer the question?
61%.
Okay. Yes.
So I think I have a pretty good grasp on the model, and I think the model relies on sort of mounting pressure from customers or other stakeholders maybe to encourage companies to make responsible decisions. However, I think that relies on an implied level of transparency, or at least information about where a company is doing business, or if you're a worker in that company's supply chain, who you're doing business for. And a lot of that information only plays out after a large failure. So if we look at Rana Plaza, no one was thinking about building safety in Bangladesh until a building collapsed. Does your model incorporate a more proactive approach to CSR, or does it rely on this reactive approach? Whereas when something bad has happened and then there's mounting pressure, we're able to respond and create safeguards against it recurring.
Okay, great question. When this disaster happened in Bangladesh, there were more pressure on companies to be socially responsible. But where did this pressure build? In regulations, isn't it? In regulations. While if you want to be proactive, you have to address not the regulatory, not the instrumental level, but more the social level or the moral level. So when you have a disaster, an additional regulation, you have the instrumental level, this one. If you want to be proactive, I would suggest more the social level than even the ethical level, because here too you have a lot of controversy. Kiran.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. I think it's a much larger subject that you're trying to condense into a shorter one.
In half an hour.
But on the point that you made about the opportunity that the CSR gives to the companies in making the money.
Yes.
So do you think it is the same in terms of the development of the country? Because if you think from a perspective of the less developed country versus a developed country, the opportunity that the CSR gives must be more in terms of money making in developed country compared to the less developed country. Because I'm thinking that because the kind of choice the consumers have in the developed country is much more compared to a less developed country. So and the companies that will have this motivation and the money to do the CSR is also more in the developed country compared to the less developed country. So how do you exactly compare this situation, and did you think about that?
Yes. Have you ever heard of the tyranny of short-termism? Okay. Even a company that is working not in a developing country, okay? Let's say they are extracting their resources from a lake without addressing their environmental responsibilities. That lake will die eventually. So if that owner or this company, if it's thinking long term, they have to address their responsibilities.
But that's going only to the second tier that you talked about, 3 circles. So you are going only up to the level of environment, but not to the societal level where you are actually trying to contribute to the development of society.
Yes, correct. But anyway, it's contextual. You cannot generalize a certain model. Now, even a company is making money. What counterbalances this model is the long-term vision. So if you are here just to pull your benefits and then immigrate to America, well, you might think on the very short term. But if you're here to stay, you want to develop your business, your community, your family, no, you have to think on the long term. So this is a very, in fact, this is very actual, this thinking. All these developing countries, why does China has as much environmental responsibilities as the United States that has been using the environmental resources for 100 years or not? Well, anyway, it is not a backward-looking model. In fact, it's a forward-looking model. If we want to address the survival of the company, the growth, and the job creation on the long term, you should address your corporate social responsibility in any case. Tosca?
I'm not surprised you will ask you a question about NGOs and the way they try to put pressures on companies for more social responsibility. So there's an academic, we actually read another article by him in class yesterday, Humphrey Fellow, who says when it comes to NGOs and how they try to influence international intergovernmental organizations, that rather than focusing on those NGOs that have the strongest need for change in practices from the perspective of the NGOs, they will approach those that once they've had a success in. So now to make an analogy with companies, so is it possible that NGOs will approach certain companies, find that they are vulnerable to pressure from NGOs to change their practices towards greater social responsibility, and that those NGOs will then continue to be approaching the same companies for more change in practices, rather because they are achieving some wins, rather than focusing on companies where the needs, where the violations, if you will, of social or human rights, etc., are largest. Do you see that as a possibility? That's what this one offers.
Il faut de tout pour faire un monde. you need everything to make a world. So there will be NGOs that are more combative, and there are more NGOs that are more that will look at the easy path. I'm an adept of what the strategy of the IUCN, the International Union for the Conservation of Nature. Example given: instead of naming and shaming the cement factories, they work with them in order to improve their communities and their environmental impact. Personally, I'm more an adept of that vision. But, definitely, you need to have NGOs, a diversity of NGOs with a diversity of thoughts, because even an NGO that looks at a company to cooperate with them, they will use the naming and shaming NGOs. They will put them in their balance, let me say, in order to require things from companies. Did I answer the question?
Not entirely. I do think you're absolutely right about the insider versus outsider model and the multi-unit, but maybe we can talk about it outside.
Okay. Yes.
When you talk about some of these implicit attitudes
Yes.
companies and then also the moral and societal norm, that both of those require huge paradigm shifts and are easier said than done. But in your experience, what have you found have been good levers to inform that type of paradigm shift?
It's not that difficult, and it's happening. We're witnessing it. The tobacco factory, isn't it a paradigm shift? It is. Addressing the environmental concerns now, Onondaga Lake is a big example. When did we start addressing in the region here the pollution in Onondaga Lake? That was a paradigm shift from a company that had the right to use these environmental services to its own profit to a company that has to address its environmental impact, even from a company that it bought. It's in Honeywell. In fact, it's not that direct. So the paradigm shift is happening. Why is it happening? Definitely because of civil society, definitely because of NGOs that are sometimes putting pressure, some negatively, sometimes are cooperating with companies, but the paradigm shift is happening. Not the same way everywhere, not the same way addressing all industries, but they're contextual, in fact. But this virtuous cycle, this is very important, because when you give something to society, society asks for more. And when society asks for more, you build more pressure on the companies to be even more socially responsible. And then you give society more, and then society requires for more. So this is the virtuous cycle of corporate social responsibility and social advancement, in fact. Yes?
You mentioned that the brand value is 28% about the way that the company is viewed as their level of corporate social responsibility. So I tended to see that, like, if my company is brand is more valued because people think I'm socially responsible, whether it's greenwashed or it's legit, right? Then my advantage isn't because I'm socially responsible, but it's because I'm more socially responsible than my competitors.
Okay.
And so as this virtuous cycle continues to ask more and more of all companies, does it get to a point where the competitive advantage that you may have in being more socially responsible than your neighbor becomes not worth the increasing cost of the society asking more and more?
This is an academic question. It needs research. But I certainly hope that we will reach the point where all companies will be equally socially responsible and trying to extract value from being more socially responsible. We're not here yet.
And Dr. Akerlof came and spoke just last week about fishing for fools. He was talking about the strong incentive that a company with a good reputation has to mine their reputation. And so if a company builds a legitimate, strong, corporate social responsible reputation, I mean, do you see in this model, if these values aren't internalized, and the managers that there's a strong impetus to mine this and to maybe hide some social irresponsibility under this veneer.
It happened. There is a classic case of Merck or Merck's, the big pharma. So they did good for, I don't remember the names of the medicine, a certain medicine that was given away for African countries. Now they used their reputation in order to try to hide the Vioxx that killed people in the US and elsewhere in the country. So this is here, a decision from the manager to conserve, to build on his CSR values, or try to discount them, let me say. It's a question of manager's decision. Was there enough pressure on that manager in order to maintain the social responsibility of his company, the values of his social responsibility, or was it an explicit attitude? Obviously, it was not an implicit attitude. It was an explicit attitude. Other questions? Yes?
I'd like to build off of that a little bit, Pierre, and ask. Here you're talking about the pressure on the managers, but there's many levels of managers.
Yep.
There could be things that are going on with social responsibility that they don't fully oversee.
Okay.
For example, they might have a division of corporate social responsibility where they see from time to time what's going on with it, but they may have very little of their own personal action involved in doing CSR work itself. In that case, how would you describe through your model, or how would you explain how the multiple levels within a company that has decision-making power to make choices or to refrain from certain things to deal with corporate social responsibility or not?
Okay. In the model, this is addressed here in the organizational players. So if I'm the CEO, the managers that are my direct subordinates are here. If I'm a line manager, my organizational players are the ones that report to me. Okay? Now, can we complicate it even more? Yes, we could complicate it, but it's as complicated already as it is. So it does address this aspect. And now in the postmodern organization, in fact, it's more participative. So the information, the decision-making is more participative. It's deductive and inductive. So in fact, all companies are trying, not with success for everybody, are trying to make everybody participate in these high-level decisions. Yes. Gianna.
My question is that I want to know, do the shareholders, shareholders,
Yes.
do they have a responsibility in a social responsibility? Because you just talk about the managers' responsibilities. Before managers have to take some decisions, they have to have the agreement of the shareholders.
Okay. The answer is here. But let me start with the Norwegian fund. The biggest sovereign fund in the world has taken the decision of not investing in companies that are not socially responsible. So these are shareholders, and these are valuable ones because, in fact, they are trendsetters. Now, not only the Norwegian fund. This is a research about the number, the percentage of, in fact, institutional investors that buy shares of companies that are socially responsible. So you have 12% of the investment funds in the United States are dedicated to socially responsible investments. What does it mean? It means you have two parts. You have the investors that would invest simply with the prospect of gaining money, okay? With the prospect of profit. And then you have another part that would, these are the 12%, that would invest with two, in fact, perspectives. One, profit, and two, social responsibility. So in fact, you have 12% more. If you're socially responsible, you have a chance of having 12% more clients looking at your stocks to buy them. So yes, shareholders have the responsibility, and they are addressing already their responsibilities in going after socially responsible companies. Simon.
Thank you for the presentation. My question concerns small and medium enterprises.
Yes.
Perhaps I may have missed it in the presentation, but I wanted to get your views on, and I guess I'm thinking of developing countries, particularly smaller ones, like those in the Caribbean where I come from.
Yes.
Where SMEs form, they really are pillar of the economy.
Yes.
We're not even talking about the formal economy. So my question is, do you see CSR as, I wouldn't say being antithetical, but as being more difficult? Could you speak particularly about some of the challenges of CSR for SMEs and how these could be overcome?
Yes. Very good question, and the answer is here. Reductionist mimicry. You do not have a CSR model that could be applied anywhere. The manager has the responsibility of addressing what kind of CSR she or he can do. I wrote, in fact, a chapter, a part of a chapter, in a publication, in a book published by Bocconi University in Italy, a case study about a pharmacy, 8 employees, very small business. In Lebanon, this pharmacy was addressing its social responsibility, not counterintuitively. So if, I'm not talking only about the medical part, I'm talking about something else. So if a client or a patient comes to the pharmacy with a certain prescription, they have to advise him if he should buy this medicine or buy a less expensive one. This is the medical part. No, I'm talking about another part. This pharmacy, so that its community, its neighborhood, needs a collection point for recyclables. Okay? So they provided a place where this neighborhood could bring in its recyclables. 1, 2, that pharmacy was organizing trips to nature where people from the neighborhood would plant trees. So this is a bit counterintuitive. Now, this is social responsibility in a way. How did it affect its business model? How did it affect its profits? The result is the following. For 2 years now, all the pharmacies have reduced profits. They have reduced turnover because the government decided to lower the price of the medicine. Okay? Except that pharmacy. When all the pharmacies went down 25% in their turnover, that specific pharmacy went up 6%. How does corporate social responsibility translate into profits? There are many paths. You have to address the corporate social responsibility as contextual to your neighborhood, as contextual to your community. There is not one size fits all. Thank you very much. No, we have a question here.
Thank you. So one of the terms you mentioned is just sustainability in general. So I was wondering if you could get into maybe your own take on sustainability or the most effective programs or strategies to be sustainable. Obviously, it's company-specific, context-specific, but can you think of a success story or an example of sustainability that intrigues you that you find?
Success stories abound about sustainability.
Yes, a corporation, a company.
Nike, Whole Foods, there are plenty. successful stories. But again, these stories are contextual. Each company has its own story to tell about how did it address corporate social responsibility and how did it benefit. Now, sustainability, environmental sustainability, social sustainability, profit sustainability, all these are sustainability. To my sense, sustainability is extracting value while preserving the reservoir where we are extracting our resources. Thank you very much.